Hello. I am a grateful believer in Jesus. I am celebrating recovery over lust, a porn addiction, anger issues, childhood sexual trauma. My current struggle is trying to not be superficially judgmental. My name is Bryan. Before I get started, I hand wrote this the first time, and I still feel a little twinge in my carpal tunnel every now and then, and that. But a couple times, I put my pen down, and I was like, wow, I have never told another human being what I just wrote on this piece of paper. And now, I'm about to tell a bunch of people that I don't know all that well. And I wasn't quite sure how that was going to go. And Les is telling the truth when he says that Celebrate Recovery is a safe place. They clapped for me. Guys came up and hugged me. In the small group, they said I was courageous. And I was like, wow. My shirt, some of you have seen it, it says, if you bring up my past, you should know that Jesus dropped the charges. My hope tonight is that when I get finished with this, that you believe that. So here we go. I was born on a Sunday just before noon to unwed teenage parents. My biological father was not ready to be a dad, so he chose not to be one. Before I turned 2, my mom would marry a man who would adopt me and become my earthly father. I grew up with 3 younger brothers and had what I thought was a normal childhood. As far back as I can remember, my family went to church. I really enjoyed going to Awana. It was at Awana one night when I was 8 years old that I accepted Jesus as my Savior for the first time. But during this time in my life, I was hiding a terrible secret. I had been molested by an uncle several times who was 7 years older than me. It would be over a decade before I spoke about the abuse, and when I did, it was only because someone else came out and said they had been sexually abused by the same uncle. So I didn't think I had any issues with the abuse because I wasn't the one who was having any nightmares or exhibiting any bad behaviors from it. I had buried the abuse deep inside, and I had continued to stay close with that uncle for many years, even after the abuse had come to light. I really enjoyed my experiences with the high school youth group at the church my family attended during that time in my life. We took missions trips over the summer, and I participated in many other fun and enjoyable activities. The summer between my junior and senior year of high school was very uplifting to me. So much so, in fact, that I stood in front of the congregation of the church. I said I was going to go to Moody Bible Institute and be a youth pastor. What the congregation didn't see was it was like air being let out of a balloon once I said that. And God had a different path for my life. I know that now. I realized that I was just on a spiritual high. But during that time in my life, I was hiding another secret. My porn addiction had begun. Me and my 2 best friends would go and steal porn magazines from the local convenience store. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, "Do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good morals." I had gotten my friends to go to church, but they had a much bigger impact on me with bad behaviors, drinking, stealing porn magazines, and that. Around the age of 20, my family stopped going to church. And I actually had to ask my mom why, because I couldn't remember. I never questioned it. She said it was because the youth pastor and the senior pastor left the church around the same time. A couple of years later, my parents split up and divorced. When I was 21, a very significant event happened in my life when I went to my first adult bachelor party at a strip club. I was instantly hooked, as I was an overweight, shy introvert that was not good at talking to females I was attracted to. For a while, I was going to the strip club once a week. One time, my dad and my uncle even went with me. One night, as I left the club, a female was standing across the street where my car was parked. She engaged me in a conversation, and after understanding what she was offering me, we went to the business where she worked her day job, and for some reason there was a bed there, and I lost my virginity. That was the first of many interactions with her and other prostitutes. This need for sex caused me to seek relationships that revolved around sex. So, of course, those relationships didn't last more than a year. When I was not in a relationship, I would use porn and masturbation to satisfy my need for sexual pleasure. I had put such an emphasis on sex that while living with my best friend and his wife, I had an affair with her. When she cut the affair off, I just moved on to the next meaningless relationship. These behaviors continued for many years, as did my weight gain, which caused me to be even less picky about who I was in a relationship with. My mom at one time even said that watching porn and masturbating was fine with her. I wouldn't get anyone pregnant or catch an STD. Years later, I remember telling my mom that I did not want to be in a relationship with a woman who has kids. So when months later, I got into a relationship with a woman who has kids, my mom reminded me that I had said that. My reply was, I don't feel that way anymore. In between that relationship, when that relationship started and when the previous one ended, I had gotten serious about losing weight, as I had reached a weight of 525 pounds. I joined a gym late in 2006, and I pushed myself to lose weight. I would go 6-7 days a week, work out 90 minutes to 2 hours a day. My new girlfriend and her 3 daughters moved in Labor Day weekend 2007. I woke up on Labor Day, and I passed out on the way to the bathroom. After coming to and yelling for her, I took my first ride in an ambulance at the age of 36. The fact that I still weighed 500 pounds, there were just certain tests that the hospital could not run to determine what had caused me to pass out. After explaining to the doctor what I had been doing over the weekend, I got stitches on the inside of my bottom lip, and I was sent home and told to come back in a week to get them taken out. All that week, when I would stand up and take 2 steps, I would be out of breath. So when I went back to the hospital, I demanded that they run some tests and determine why this was happening. After some tests and arguing with an ignorant doctor that had been called in, it was determined that I had blood clots in my lungs. The decision for treatment was to start me on a clot buster called heparin and transport me to a different hospital. After a few minutes of being on the heparin, I turned to my then girlfriend. I told her to go get someone because something was wrong. When she returned to the room, I was hyperventilating. I did not want to keep the mask on my face that was feeding me oxygen. After being coaxed off the ER bed and onto the gurney, I was loaded into an ambulance and transported to the other hospital, hyperventilating the whole way. The only advice I was given was control your breathing. I closed my eyes, and the only thought going through my mind was that I did not want to die that night. When I arrived at the other hospital, my mom was there. She saw how pale I looked and that my vitals had dropped dangerously low, so she started to plan my funeral. I never felt like I was going to die, but something had to be done to break the blood clots up. The decision was made to use a stronger clot buster that had a small chance to cause me to have a stroke. I thank God that the stronger clot buster worked, and it did not cause me to have a stroke. I was later told that the heparin caused me to have a pulmonary embolism, and that is why I was hyperventilating. That date was September 10th, 2007. What a wild way to start a new relationship. Months later, I would propose to this woman, but only because I felt pressured to by her daughters. In 2010, I started to act out a learned behavior from the strip clubs I used to go to on one of her daughters. This went on for several months, and I would feel guilty each time it happened. I knew I was doing wrong, and I would make a vow to stop, but the next time the opportunity presented itself, I did the same thing. I kept waiting for my fiancée to confront me about what I was doing to her daughter, but it would be late in 2010, and it was after we had broken up that she finally confronted me about what was going on. I denied any wrongdoing, of course, and she said that she would not call the cops on me. Thinking that I had dodged a bullet, I swore off being with a woman who had kids, and even justified what had happened, thinking it was the girl's fault because she knew what was going to happen when she came to me and asked for money. The longer that situation had went on, I had actually lost interest in my fiancée, and I remember having thoughts about being in a relationship with her daughter. 5 weeks after the breakup, I received a call from a detective asking if I would come in and answer some questions about some inappropriate touching with my ex's daughter. Being confident that I could continue to deny any wrongdoing, I went to the meeting alone. At first, I did keep denying. Then suddenly a wave of guilt washed over me, and I admitted to what I had done. Despite knowing that I would be going to jail for what I had done, I felt a sense of relief because I no longer needed to keep lying about what I had done. Later that night, while I was at work, reality set in, and I started planning my suicide because I felt that I would not survive being in jail for what I was going there for. I had it all planned out, and all I had to do was wait to get off work and go kill myself. While still at work, a phone call saved my life. My aunt had called the work phone because my ex had my cell phone shut off. See, I had some deals with her, and that's what I was telling the detective. I'm like, if I'm such a bad guy and did this, then why is she still paying for my cell phone and a couple other things? So, my aunt told me that I would survive going to jail. Everything would be okay. After she said that, a sense of relief came over me, and I knew she was right. So obviously I didn't go kill myself. When I was taken to my jail cell, the other guys in the cell were having a Bible study. I remember saying to myself, okay, God, I get why I'm here. I did tell the guys in that cell what I had done to be put in jail, and none of them threatened me or gave me any attitude for it. That was God's protection, because that was the whole reason why I had planned my suicide. Despite the horrible thing I had done, God had protected me while I was in jail. When I was released from jail, I was court-ordered to do group therapy. I learned a lot about myself, like why all of my relationships had failed, that I had never dealt with being sexually abused by my uncle, and that the strip clubs was where I learned the behavior that had sent me to jail. I vowed to continue to lose weight, stay single until I was ready to be in a relationship that would lead to marriage, and stay out of the strip clubs. I still had the desire for sexual satisfaction, so I continued to watch porn and masturbate. I would justify doing that by thinking I wasn't hurting anyone by doing it. While being deep in my own porn addiction, I had talked to my dad about getting rid of his porn collection. Talk about being a hypocrite. After being single for about 9 years and working on myself, I felt I was ready to be in a relationship. I had lost over 200 pounds, and I felt that I could find a woman that I was physically attracted to, something lacking in my previous relationships. Something that I had only had once before. She was married to my best friend at the time. I asked out a couple of women at the gym, but that didn't work out for me. Next, I tried what people do in today's world when they cannot find a relationship in real life. I tried online dating. I joined a Facebook dating group and made a post. I received several responses to my post, so I started choosing who to reply to. After eliminating the women who did not speak English or had kids, I was chatting with 2 people that I would eventually figure out were scammers and just wanted money. While chatting with these 2 people, Natalie Chilale responded to my post. I liked the profile picture that I saw, so I messaged her. Our first conversation was awful. Natalie stated that people are fake and that love is not real. Previously, when I had a bad first conversation with one of the women that had responded to my post, I deleted the conversation. But I did not do it at this time. I remember telling myself that I would not hear back from Natalie, and eventually I'd get around to deleting the conversation one day. Well, the next day, Natalie messaged me, and the conversation was much better than the previous day. After chatting with her for a week and having just one short video chat, just so I could see that she was the person in the profile picture, I got this feeling right here that she was the woman I was meant to be with. When I told her how I felt and that I wanted to have kids with her one day, her exciting response was, "Yeah, why not? I need that too." That was on January 13th, 2020. Our relationship had a lot of ups and downs the rest of 2020. At one point, both of us thought about breaking up with the other. I thank God that we have stayed together, and our relationship is very strong now. Natalie is from Zambia, and their marriage culture is Old Testament dowry and bride price. On September 10th, there's that date again, 2020, I paid dowry to her mother, so in her culture, we are married. At this point in my life, I was still not attending a church, nor did I have a relationship with God. In March of 2020, Natalie told me that she wanted to post pictures of us on Instagram. So I made an Instagram account just to see what she would post. She didn't post anything, so I did nothing with Instagram for about a year. When I did finally decide to see what Instagram was all about, I started following some health and weight loss pages, as well as some inappropriate pages. One day I was watching some videos on Instagram. A Christian content video popped up, which was very random since that was not in my algorithm. The next day, 2 more Christian content videos popped up, and again I said, okay, God, I get it. So I changed the pages I was following. Eventually, I started to read my Bible every day. This was the only thing I took with me when I left jail. In December 2021, I started going to church. And in April 2022, when I was looking for a place to live, someone at the church was looking for a roommate. It was this roommate who would tell me about Celebrate Recovery. And all he said was, hey, on Friday nights, I go to Celebrate Recovery at Edgewood Church in Rock Island. I was like, okay. So a couple weeks later, I changed some personal things in my schedule, and I went. Having no idea what I was getting myself into. I had been to therapy after jail. I thought I was fixed. And they serve a meal, and I like to eat. They sing worship. You can laugh. They sing worship songs, and I grew up in the church. So I'm used to doing that. You get a lesson or a testimony. Hey, that's cool. You go down to the small group. Now, here's where I don't know what I'm getting into. So I'm not going to be the first person to talk. So I sit and I listen to a few other guys, and I'm like, wow, they're sharing some deep stuff. And what gets said in this room stays in the room. We don't judge. And I walked out of that room and I said, wow, I need Celebrate Recovery. In February 2022, I went to Zambia to meet Natalie and her family in person. Natalie's uncle sat in for her late father while I was there. Her uncle was a pastor. We had this amazing conversation about God and the Bible because I had reconnected with God. When I got back to O'Hare Airport in Chicago, I was pulled aside for secondary questioning. I was asked about the purpose of my trip, and after having my bags thoroughly searched, I went on my way home. That situation caused me to reconnect with my mother, who I had not spoken to in 9.5 years. God can use crazy things for his purpose. My mom and I talk weekly now and have a great relationship. Okay, sorry I lost my spot. About 4 months later, I received a letter from Homeland Security stating that I should not have received a passport because of what I had went to jail for, and that I had to return it to them. I was at work when I received this UPS envelope, and I opened it and read it, and I was very confused about it for a while. On my way home that night, it finally hit me. God can do anything. Natalie had told me how important it was for me to go there and for her family to meet me and get to know me just a little bit before her coming here. That is the God that we serve. He can make anything happen. "2022 was an amazing year for me. I rededicated my life to Jesus. On December 8th of 2022, I was baptized. On January 15th of this year, I was allowed to give part of the sermon at my church. In less than 12 years, because I submitted to God's will for my life, he took me from a jail cell to the pulpit. On June 5th, 2022, I finally submitted my battle with lust and pornography to God, and I have not looked at anything pornographic since then. After about 34 years of being a slave to it, at that time, 2/3 of my life, I had a porn addiction. The only relationship that is stronger than my relationship with my wife is my relationship with God. And it's no coincidence that as my relationship with God has gotten stronger, my relationship with my wife has gotten stronger. My life verse is Romans 8:13. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. And I have to do that every day. Thank you for letting me share.